Luke here, and we're going to be installing our unmute mod on the phone's record out on this Katana. So this is like my updated video. I will also be posting a like FAQ most asked questions video on this mod, and I might reference some of that stuff in here as well. So first thing I want to get out of the way, like when you're doing this mod, I really recommend getting like a rocker style switch like this. And you can see how big this one is. Like we're going to have to drill a fairly large hole here. You're gonna want to go to Harbor Freight and get yourself a step drill bit. This was like $8 or something like that. And then the switches, I got a pack of them for around the same amount of money. And then we needed some wire. The switches did come with some wire. We'll see if those are long enough. But if they're not long enough, we'll find out. You're going to need some additional wire. We'll see if we need that. Now, the reason you want to use these rocker switches is because they're very low profile. And the one I used in my original video stuck out quite a ways. So when you would try to lay the amp down, like loading it in your car or whatever, you couldn't do it on the back. So that was really annoying. I was laying it down on the front side a bunch. So we're doing this, and this lets you lay it down flat, and it's low enough that these corners protect it. So you're not going to damage the switch or bang it up or anything. The other thing we should mention is the reason you want to do a switch and not just make it permanent. Is because if you do make it permanent, it will disable the speaker simulation when you're using the phones or recording out. And that is really useful if you're recording and maybe you're someplace and the computer you're using doesn't have the drivers, doesn't have the software, you can't use USB, you're just using an interface. Or if you were, I don't know, if you were going out into like a PA speaker or something like that. That is super useful to have. And if you use the switch, that means you can re-enable that if you need to. First thing we're going to want to do is unscrew these two Phillips right there, and then the two on each side on the back here. The ones on the top are machine screws. Okay, now this can come out. This should just slide out, but we want to unplug the speaker first. So get that. It's tight, but it's off. Here we go. Comes out, and then that's the actual amp itself, and that's what we're going to be working with. All right, now that we got the amp out, we're actually going to flip this around, and we're going to take off all these silver screws surrounding this heatsink here. Okay, so now that comes out, and we want to be very careful with this. We're not going to unplug anything quite yet. Let's take a look at it first. Now, our goal is to get out this bottom board here, and we're actually not going to use those screws there. We're going to leave those, but there are some screws on the underside of the chassis that we'll take off. And we need to unplug right now this connector, that power connector back there, as well as probably we need to snake out the speaker cable. There's two connectors right there, and then we're going to have to undo these two nuts on the back side. Pull very carefully. There's that piece out. Let's take out this connector. Just kind of start on a side, a corner, and pull in. There we go. Speaker cable, let's get that out of the way. Don't forget that later on. And that connects directly to the board there, so we may end up cutting the zip tie. And then we need to have one more power connector at the back here. Make sure the amp's been unplugged for a few minutes before you unplug this. Okay, there we go. Now that's all done. These two, don't forget these. Sorry, I'm not holding it very steady. There we go. Okay, and now we got to get just these bottom two. And there will be this little plastic bushing that we need to not lose also. Okay, now we're ready to actually unscrew that board, and that's going to be, if you look on the bottom here, 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know if I need those other two. Yeah, I do. So 6 screws on the back side here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do not do these other ones. Not necessary. These are very small. Oops, don't strip it. There we go, it's loose. I'm kind of being a little not delicate with this. You can be as delicate as you wish to be. All right, so quickly let's go over what we're going to be soldering. It is going to be these two lugs right here on the back side. This is the 50-watt Mark II model combo. So just make sure if you're doing this on any other Katana version, you're being aware that this is the record out jack we're looking for. So it doesn't actually have to be in this position on your board, but we're just making sure we're doing the record out jack, not like the foot controller jack or anything like that. You can see it's the most farthest bottom right one is the record phone out, as long as that correlates with the jack you are using, which is this one, because when this board is in, those standoffs are actually down. So if I'm looking at the orientation as it goes in, right, it's going to be that one closest to the camera right now. That is the record out. So that is what I'm going to bridge. And we're just going to make sure I got one wire on there and one on there. And that the other side of our wire has the little spade connectors for our switch or whatever switch you're using. Make sure they're at least long enough, because where we're going to drill the hole is going to be somewhere in between the aux port and those two 1/4-inch terminals, somewhere right about there. And we're going to be drilling it there. So when this board is in, the wires are going to snake from underneath the board around up top. So it needs to be just quite long enough, and I'll show you as we do that there. All right, now's the time to discuss planning where you're going to drill the hole for the switch. I've put the board back in. It's not screwed in, but I'm just putting in so I can see how much room I've got on the back side here. I placed the one on my last video right about there. So on the other side, it's right in between the text. I think I'm going to go for that again here because it's a nice spot. You could put it, though, wherever you want on the back side of the amp here, as long as you like where it is, and maybe it doesn't cover up the text, because as we flip this over here, there is a lot of text on the back of the amp. So, maybe you want to put it somewhere kind of right in the middle. I'm going to actually aim on this side so I can aim perfectly in the middle of the aux in, and I'm going to use this automatic punch tool. You don't necessarily need this. You can just maybe scribe this or just start with a small drill bit right there before you use your step drill. Or you can be risky and just start with the step drill. Well, it's up to you, but I'm going to use this, and that will help me center my drill as I'm making the hole. Okay, as you can kind of see, I've turned the amp where I've just pulled the wires and I've brought the board around. If you need to cut that zip tie on the wire so that way you can get the board out of the way, that's fine. I just pulled it a little bit so the board is just like loosely here, but it's still zip tied with that speaker wire. And now I'm gonna use the automatic punch. Where did I put that? And I'm gonna go like right there. Now, in the last video, you saw me use tape on the inside, and that's because I stupidly did that with the board still in there. So now, with this situation, I'm just gonna go for it. There is the control board at the top, but I'm not very worried about this. And if I break it, I'll buy another one. All right, let's just start sizing this up as I'm getting closer. I need to go quite a bit more. There we go. You can say I put it in. It's covering up the words over here a little bit, but I know what's on the back of this amp. I'm not going to sell the amp. I don't care that it covers that. It's my amp. So foot control, I know that that's saying tip and ring. It's not a big deal for me. So if you really, really care, you know, put it over there, put it somewhere else. It's up to you. Okay, now I'm going to just vacuum up some of the metal shards, but I'm going to be very careful to not use the vacuum right by the board because negative pressure can sometimes lead to static electricity discharge. So if you're going to clean the board, I really recommend using compressed air to just blow off, just to make sure you've gotten everything off. I'm really not too worried. We'll see if it breaks. We'll find out. Okay, next I'm going to solder the wires on, but I did just do a test mock-up, and these wires that came with my switch, they are too short. So I'm going to use some little heat shrink solder connectors, and I'm gonna just attach a little bit of extra wire onto the ends of these. Okay, I just did it off camera, but just make sure you've got wires long enough. This isn't a tutorial on how to do this, but you know, that's essentially what I did. I just gave myself a little extra length. It's okay if you're a little too long, because this is obviously non-conductive, and it's okay if that, you know, just touching that or whatever. You'll be good. Okay, the soldering iron's heating up, and I'll quickly go over again what we're doing. So we're connecting, let me get a little pointer here. Oops. We're connecting this far lug here and this one. So one wire to each of those, doesn't matter which color or whatever, because the back of our switch only has 2 terminals, so it's just on or off. So I'm gonna start with maybe this one, and I'm gonna go for it here. Now I'm gonna route the wire this way, not this way. And the reason for that is this side here is going to be the back wall of the amp. So there's not going to be a way to get a wire down through here, but there will be room on this side. So I'm going to go this way with it, and I'm going to connect one there and one there. Oops. That looks good. Okay. I made bad solder in the first video, and I had to redo it. So that's why you want to get this right in the first try. Or at least try to. You know, it's just a learning experience if you're new to this. I'm certainly new to this. Okay, actually what I'm going to do this time on this one is I'm going to give it a little bit extra on it first. And then I need a little more on that side just to cover the strands more. There we go. Now at this point, if you just want to check and make sure you're good, you can get your multimeter or multimeter, or however you say it, however you like to say it. And we're just going to check and see. I'm going to have on the one end, we'll just take it, and I'm going to have one probe in there, and then the other. So we know that one's good. Let's check the black cable. So we're good. Those are good, and they feel pretty tight, you know, not going to come off. So I would say that's a job well done. Okay, so now it's pretty much time to reassemble everything. I'm just going to kind of clear up my space a little bit. And yeah, so I'm going to get the board back in the correct orientation. So I've kind of flipped it over. It's going to go in this way. Now, I don't want to forget, these are the inner rings, which go on the inside here. So that's important. Now, there's 2 ways you can kind of install these. I think probably easiest to set them on the ends first here. So put them on the jacks, so they're like that. And then that'll probably be the easiest way. Go ahead and just hopefully they don't come off. Oh, and they fell off, of course. So maybe you get them in when they're like that, or you hold it up. Whatever works. Don't get too frustrated with it. It's like Legos. Okay, there we go. And now once that's in, I actually like to start with those jacks on the back just because those things are super annoying when they come in and out. So I'm just gonna thread this in. I'm not gonna tighten it all the way. I'm just gonna thread it in a few times so that way it can't come out. I'll tighten these jacks very last because the board might move a little bit and I don't want to put any strain on the jack lugs on the board. So I'm just gonna keep them loose like that. All right, now it's time to plug in your wires. You can see if I back up a little bit, they're the two wires that are coming out that side, and that's the reason why we routed them that way. Because if you tried to go, you know, around the backside, you'd be stuck. There'd be nothing you could do there. So here we go. Doesn't matter which color goes to which because it's just on and off. So let's just see here. It's a little tricky to get in. I suppose you could have plugged this in first before you put the board in, but there we go. All right, that's on. I'm just gonna make sure the wires live in like a slightly comfortable place. And then it's time, I'm gonna plug in everything actually before I screw in the board. Which maybe is not the right way to do it, but as you can tell by this whole video, I haven't done everything by the book exactly. Now remember, speaker cable, don't forget this. Down through that little opening right there. Oops. I haven't really been filming this part. So I've plugged in this cable. That was the one I was talking about where, hey, if you don't screw it in, you can keep your finger behind it. That way the board doesn't flex. You're gonna have to plug in the heat sink cable here. That's gotta go in right there. So that's the last one. But before I do that one, I am gonna actually screw in the board. I will do that for this. And then all I'm gonna do is kind of, you know, tip it over. We had those short black screws. Make sure the standoffs are all lined up, and I'm gonna screw those in now. I'm gonna tighten them all by hand and not with the drill. And it is kind of slightly blocked by the speaker cable. Kind of fish that in there. There we go. Here's another way I can show you this. So you're putting it on, right? The knob side, that's gonna be the side with this parallel flap. So hopefully that helps. All right, and then this is gonna get those long silver screws in through the particle board. All right, now it's time to put the amp back in the combo. So just kind of lining it up, kind of the way it came out. Actually went in super easy. And then of course make sure you plug in the speaker cables. And then I can go ahead and screw on the back. There we go. All right, let's go see if it works. Okay, so I got the amp on. Switch is off. Oop, I didn't tighten those. Don't forget to tighten those. I totally forgot. We'll do that right after I stop filming this. So I got the switch off, so everything's in normal operation. We can hear the guitar. I'm just turning off my volume. Now I'm gonna plug in the phone out, volume on the guitar. And I can hear it's coming out of my PA that I've plugged in, but not from the Katana. So it's working just like it would. And that's why the switch is super important, because if you have the switch, then you can operate it just like normal if you need to. And you can have the Katana speaker mute, because maybe that is important to have it mute. Now, when I turn this on, the Katana speaker returns, but we notice there's a little bit of harshness coming from the PA. And that's because with this switch on, For some reason, the Katana disables the speaker simulation, and I presume that's because the speaker simulation is for when you're not using the actual speaker. So, of course, you would want speaker simulation. But the Katana speaker has its own character, and it's a guitar speaker, so that's disabled by default. And when we're turning this switch on, so that way we can have the speaker on and the out on, the speaker sim is off because the Katana wants, or it thinks that it's coming out of the speaker like normal. So that's kind of the trick. So what you would want to do then, if that's important to you to have speaker simulation, but also have the Katana on and the out on, you would, in between this and your PA, wherever you're going, you would want to get a little speaker simulator pedal, something like that, or an IR, and then you would be good to go. But there it is. Please post any comments below. Please like the video if this was useful. I hope you learned a little more than from the last video. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.